What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to review The Last of Us Episode 6. This is probably one that I was the most conflicted of the group. I'll be honest. It's been on a great little stretch. I've talked at least the last 2 or so episodes that I thought each one was kind of like my back-to-back favorite. I will say, when this episode nails it, they nail it. A lot of the emotional impact of this episode really comes through, and it's through, again, whether it's through copying certain parts of the game is when this show is, to me, at its best, but also the acting, right? There was a lot to like. I'm not going to sit here and say this episode was garbage or anything like that, but it definitely was the most uneven. I thought they definitely took some liberties, probably not as much as they've taken in the past couple episodes, right? We have seen episodes where they have deviated quite a bit from the game. To be honest, they didn't deviate all that much in terms of kind of these big set pieces for this episode, but yet when they did deviate, I felt it didn't land as much. So the iconic scene of, you don't know what loss is, and Ellie's kind of rebuttal to that was perfect from both of them. Absolutely incredible. Actually, Bella Ramsey, not entirely, I would say, carried the episode, but she had some incredible moments, including even finding out about Sarah when she's just kind of sitting there, right, getting her hair cut, and she's just got this kind of like blind look to her, but you can tell she's kind of processing it, where she's like, oh, shoot, he had a daughter. So I thought she did phenomenal, honestly, from start to finish. And again, these bigger scenes with her, the ending, right, when Joel falls off the horse, like all that was really incredible. And it was either driven by her or it was driven by Pedro Pascal, right? The acting there. I even thought, Joel and Tommy, they're kind of back and forth, and just the uneasiness of Joel in the little community. I thought all of that was pretty darn good. The episode was fascinating. It had its big moments in terms of emotional, but then when they kind of again, deviated. So the thing with Ellie, she didn't run away. She was just at a house so that definitely took away from it a bit. I felt the ending was incredible. My wife actually said out loud before I did. I was going to say, as the ending was going on and, he gets injured, I was going to literally tell my wife, pretty okay, solid episode, but that ending was super rushed. And then she's like, well, that was rushed. And it's yeah, the last 10 minutes or so, as soon as they make it up to the school, all that's supposed to happen. And you're like, are they going to do all that? I don't even think it was 10 minutes, to be honest. Maybe it was 6. They pull up and it's oh my God, you got 5 to 6 minutes left to do everything. So he's got to tell her, the singing thing. You go in, they discover basically wrong place. We got to go to Salt Lake City. And then that the stuff happens. And I will say, I definitely, I would prefer the game. I do continue to in a way that the show makes Joel non-invincible, okay? The hand injury kind of lasting with him, I get. It becomes a little annoying, but also in terms of realism, I understand it. I mean, that kind of thing, whether it's a hairline fracture or whatever it may be, that's going to stick with you, specifically if it's not treated, right? So I imagine the hand is, brutally injured, and when he has these moments of basically adrenaline, which you kind of see against the guy at the end, right? When he's choking him out, he slams him, he headbutts him, you can tell, and I like it. Joel is old. Joel, I believe he's supposed to be 56, and I think he's supposed to be that in the game, right, as well, or at least around there. And in the game, he is way more invincible than they make Pedro Pascal in the show. So in a sense, I do like it. I do like that they're trying to show he is older. He's not going to go up against 1,000 infected and soldiers, right? He just can't. So, and also, budget, can't do it. You're not going to show, 15 hours of gameplay. You're not going to do that in the show. So the way they adapt it, right, it's an adaptation. The way they do it overall, I think, is pretty darn solid. But there's just something to his injury that's so powerful. It's also a little bit long. I mean, I don't think prolonged is maybe the right word. I mean, he prolongs passing out and stuff, but it's just not as long, right? So the stab is well, that's just one of those cliche kind of scenes where you think everything's cool, characters are looking at each other, and then he looks down and there's this huge thing sticking out of him. It's that's been done so many times. Again, is it believable that he would get pushed off the second floor, fall into whatever, the thing is to go through him? Is that believable? I don't know, but there's just something so cool and so iconic, really, to that, right? And then he basically tries to fight off, passing out and just dying, right? Because you don't really know until it flashes, and then you figure it all out over the next couple hours of the game. So I much, much prefer the game over this. This is one of those things, it's not as big of a change as what they've done before. You know, like a Bill thing. This is not as big of a shift as that was. This is a lot smaller, but I actually think this hurt it. I feel that way more than like the Bill episode. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So that's kind of where I'm at. The ending felt pretty darn rushed. A lot of the scenes where they did kind of deviate off, and, you know, him having like panic attacks, basically. I don't know why that's a thing that's in this show. It doesn't really make any kind of sense. I guess he's worried for like Ellie. Again, maybe it shows his weakness, like it's showing his age and all this stuff is kind of catching up to him. Even the talk with Tommy, I guess, right? Like that was, now the talk with Tommy was very different than the talk with Tommy in the game. And it was more focused on his inability to do things in the show. See, this is where I say, overall, I like the show kind of making him human, a 56-year-old that doesn't have too much, you know, energy left in him. I overall like it, but there's times like that, or sometimes with the hand where it's like, okay, we get it, where I'd like them to ease off. And the conversation with Tommy really was one of that, right? The game was more about, she's going to be your problem now, like I brought her this far, and you know the environment better, it makes more sense for you to take her. In the show, it was kind of that, but then it was also kind of, I'm old, you're younger than me, you're stronger than me, I'm weak. It was more of like bringing Joel down, like him talking down against himself. I don't really think that was necessary, like at all. I think you really could have kept the conversation relatively the same to the game, because again, you have those moments where you rip off the game 100%, and they're incredible moments, right? The Joel and Ellie back and forth of, you're not my daughter, I'm not your father. That's perfect. You want to know why it's perfect? Because I think it's perfect in the game, so you might as well just copy it. The Tommy thing is like, well, you could have just kept that conversation kind of the same. Instead, you made it more about Joel's age and his like weakening body state than you did about the other things, which really wasn't brought up in the game. So I don't know. This could be one of those things Troy Baker has talked about. If you could have a do-over, he would take a lot of what Pedro Pascal did. I am glad the game came out first, right? Because I wouldn't want Neil to go back and retroactively say, yeah, it would have been a better idea to like blame it all on Joel's, deteriorating body instead of other things. So, overall, it was solid. I don't think it was my least liked episode because the big moments, the emotion was there. Again, I think it was really carried, those bigger, scenes that are so iconic from the game. But I will say beyond that, there's some good jokes, right? There's some good relationship between Joel and Ellie that's not in the game. So those were all good. It's just when they decided to go left instead of, sticking with the path, it did not work as well. And they made some odd, small choices that just overall didn't elevate the show at all, at least in my opinion. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I'll see you next week for the next episode review.